The Japanese secret to memory. How to never repeat a trading mistake. Two traders, one fatal difference. David has been trading Forex for 3 years. His office is a shrine to experience. Stacks of trading books, multiple monitors displaying currency pairs, a shelf full of notebooks documenting thousands of trades. He can tell you about the time he caught a 300 pip move on Euro USD during the Brexit vote. He remembers the night he stayed up until 3 a.m. watching the yen collapse after a Bank of Japan announcement. He's experienced it all: flash crashes, trend reversals, breakout failures, and those rare, perfect setups that make you feel invincible. Yet David's account balance tells a different story. After 3 years and thousands of trades, he's barely breaking even. Worse, he keeps making the same mistakes. He still overtrades when bored. He still moves his stop loss when a trade goes against him. He still enters positions without proper confirmation because he fears missing out. David has experience, but experience hasn't made him better. Across town, Teeshi has been trading for 18 months. Her setup is simpler: one monitor, one notebook, one pen. She trades less frequently than David, sometimes only twice per week. Yet her account has grown steadily, month after month. She rarely repeats mistakes. When she violates her rules, the lesson sticks. Her trading journal isn't thick with entries, but every page represents wisdom that has become part of her neural architecture. This is the story of how Japanese memory science can transform Forex traders from chronic mistake repeaters into disciplined profit makers. The memory problem: why experience doesn't equal learning. In 1885, German psychologist Hermann Ebbinghaus discovered something troubling. Humans forget approximately 70% of new information within 24 hours. By the third day, 90% of what we learned has vanished from conscious memory. For Forex traders, this forgetting curve is catastrophic. You lose money on an impulsive trade Monday morning. You're frustrated, determined never to do it again. You write in your journal about maintaining discipline. You genuinely mean it. But by Thursday, when another perfect setup appears, that Monday lesson has faded to a vague discomfort. You take the trade, you lose again. This isn't weakness, it's neuroscience. The human brain is designed to forget. Memory formation requires more than exposure. It requires a specific process that most traders never implement. Research from Japanese cognitive scientists has revealed why some people transform experiences into wisdom while others remain trapped in cycles of repeated mistakes. The difference isn't intelligence, capital, or strategy. It's memory, or more precisely, how they transform experience into permanent behavioral change. David collects experiences like someone who takes photographs but never looks at them again. Teeshi uses ancient Japanese memory techniques to ensure every lesson becomes embedded in her brain's circuitry. This is the story of how Japanese memory science can transform Forex traders from chronic mistake repeaters into disciplined profit makers. The one-sentence revolution: Japan's minimal journaling philosophy. Walk into any traditional Japanese martial arts dojo and you might notice something unusual. Students keep journals, but they're remarkably brief. A single sentence captures an entire training session. Not paragraphs analyzing technique, not essays about philosophy. One sentence. This approach contradicts Western trading advice, which typically recommends exhaustive journals documenting every aspect of each trade: entry price, exit price, time of day, market conditions, emotional state, technical indicators used, fundamental analysis considered, and detailed post-trade analysis. The result: traders spend hours writing journals they'll never read again. The effort becomes unsustainable, and within weeks the journal is abandoned. The Japanese approach recognizes a fundamental truth: sustainability beats comprehensiveness. A practice you maintain for 5 years will transform you more than a practice you quit after 5 weeks. For trading, this means one sentence per day about your most significant lesson or mistake. That's it. Not a sentence per trade, a sentence per day, capturing your biggest insight. This constraint forces critical thinking. You can't record everything, so you must identify what matters most. Consider Teeshi's journal entries. I moved my stop loss because I couldn't accept being wrong about Euro USD direction. I overtrade when the previous day was profitable. Success makes me overconfident. I entered trades without confirmation when I've been watching charts for more than 2 hours. Boredom trades always lose. Each sentence is a distilled lesson. Not the trade details, those are captured elsewhere, but the psychological pattern or rule violation that needs to be permanently embedded in her behavior. This minimalist approach aligns with Japanese aesthetic principles found in haiku poetry and Zen gardens. The power isn't in exhaustive detail, it's in capturing essence. When you're forced to compress a day's trading into one sentence, you engage deep reflection. You can't hide behind details, you must confront the truth. Neurologically, this compression process itself enhances memory formation. Studies show that summarizing information in your own words creates stronger neural connections than copying extensive notes. The act of distilling experience into a single sentence requires you to process, understand, and internalize the lesson, exactly the cognitive work that moves information from short-term memory to long-term memory. Active recall. The Japanese training philosophy applied to trading. In traditional Japanese education, particularly in learning kanji characters and martial arts forms, there's an emphasis on what cognitive scientists now call active recall. Rather than passively reviewing information, you force your brain to retrieve it without prompts. A kanji student doesn't reread the characters they've learned. They're given the meaning and must draw the character from memory. A martial artist doesn't watch videos of techniques. They must perform the sequence without reference. This retrieval practice is uncomfortable. You struggle, you fail, you try again. But that struggle is precisely what creates permanent memory. Western education often emphasizes recognition over recall. We reread our notes, highlight textbooks, review flashcards with the answer visible. This feels productive but creates an illusion of learning. Your brain says, yes, I recognize this, but recognition isn't the same as retrieval. When the moment comes to actually use that knowledge, when a trading opportunity appears and you need to remember your rules, recognition fails you. Japanese memory techniques flip this approach. Before each trading session, Teeshi practices active recall. She doesn't open her journal and reread entries. Instead, she asks herself questions. What lesson did I learn 3 days ago? What was my biggest mistake last week? What rule did I violate on Tuesday? She struggles to remember. Sometimes she can't retrieve the information immediately. That struggle, that momentary frustration before the memory surfaces, is what strengthens the neural pathway. She's not reviewing information, she's training her brain to access it under pressure exactly as she'll need to when real money is on the line.
For traders, this means transforming your pre-trading routine. Instead of reading motivational quotes or reviewing market analysis, spend 5 minutes practicing active recall of your trading lessons. Don't look at your journal. Force your brain to retrieve your 3 most important trading rules, your 2 most common mistakes, the lesson from your last losing trade, the specific pattern you violated in your worst trade this month. This isn't pleasant. It's mentally demanding. You'll forget things, and that forgetting will frustrate you. But that's the point. The struggle to remember is what makes the memory permanent. Spaced repetition, the 1771 Kyoto secret to permanent memory. In 1771, a remarkable book was published in Kyoto. It details memory methods that Japanese scholars, monks, and merchants had been using for centuries. The core principle, information must be reviewed at specific increasing intervals to move from short-term memory to permanent neural pathways. This wasn't random wisdom. Japanese practitioners had discovered through centuries of practice what cognitive scientists would later prove in laboratories, the spacing effect. Information reviewed at increasing intervals creates dramatically stronger memories than information reviewed repeatedly in a short period. The Japanese system worked like this. You learn something new today. You review it tomorrow, 1-day interval. Then you review it 3 days later, 3-day interval. Then 7 days later, then 30 days later. Each review happens just before you're about to forget, reinforcing the neural connection at the optimal moment. Modern neuroscience confirms this approach. When you learn something new, a neural pathway forms, but it's weak and unstable. If you don't use that pathway, it dissolves within days, Ebbinghaus's forgetting curve in action. But if you reactivate the pathway through retrieval just before it dissolves, it strengthens. Each subsequent reactivation makes it stronger and more permanent. For Forex traders, this creates a systematic approach to ensuring lessons stick permanently. When Teeshi writes her one-sentence lesson for Monday, she then reviews it according to a specific schedule. Day 1, Monday, write the lesson. Day 2, Tuesday, morning active recall, retrieve Monday's lesson before trading. Day 4, Thursday, retrieve Monday's lesson again. Day 11, next week, retrieve the Monday lesson. Day 41, next month, final retrieval. This isn't random. These intervals are calculated based on research into optimal memory formation. The first interval is short, 1 day, because the memory is weakest immediately after formation. Subsequent intervals increase because the memory becomes more stable with each successful retrieval. By the time Teeshi has retrieved a lesson 5 times over increasing intervals, it's not a lesson anymore. It's part of her trading behavior. The neural pathway is so strong that when a similar situation arises, her brain automatically accesses the correct response. Consider what this means practically. On Monday, Teeshi violates her rule about stop-loss placement and writes, "I widened my stop-loss because I couldn't accept the loss. This always leads to bigger losses." On Tuesday morning, before opening her charts, she retrieves this lesson through active recall. Thursday morning, she retrieves it again. The following Thursday, again, and a month later, once more. After 5 retrievals at increasing intervals, something remarkable happens. Teeshi doesn't need to consciously remember the lesson anymore. When she's in a trade and the impulse to widen her stop-loss appears, her brain automatically signals warning. The lesson has moved from conscious knowledge to automatic behavior, from the prefrontal cortex to the basal ganglia, where habits and automatic responses are stored. This is the difference between David and Teeshi. David writes in his journal, "Don't move your stop-loss," but never systematically reviews the lesson. The neural pathway forms, but quickly dissolves. A week later, he moves his stop-loss again, and the cycle continues. Teeshi uses spaced repetition to transform the lesson into permanent neural architecture. Japanese martial artists have used this approach for centuries. A technique is practiced daily initially, then every other day, then weekly, then monthly, until it becomes muscle memory, though it's really neural pathway memory. The same principle that allows a karate master to execute complex sequences without conscious thought allows a disciplined trader to follow rules automatically under pressure. The 3-part system: implementing Japanese memory techniques in your trading routine. The beauty of this approach isn't its complexity, it's its elegant simplicity. 3 practices, 5 minutes per day, compounding results that transform trading psychology over months and years. Practice 1, the evening distillation, 2 minutes. At the end of each trading day, or on non-trading days when you've studied markets, spend 2 minutes writing 1 sentence in your journal. Not a sentence about what happened, but a sentence about what you learned. This isn't trade documentation, it's wisdom extraction. Ask yourself, if I could only remember 1 thing from today to make tomorrow better, what would it be? The constraint is crucial. You can't write about multiple lessons. You must choose. This forces prioritization and deep reflection. Some days the lesson is obvious. I entered a revenge trade after a loss and immediately regretted it. Other days the lesson is subtle. I trade best between 8 and 11 a.m. when my mind is fresh. Afternoon trades are generally weaker. The 1-sentence format makes the practice sustainable. Even after a 12-hour trading day, you can write 1 sentence. Even when you're exhausted and frustrated, you can capture the essence of what needs to change. Practice 2, morning active recall, 3 minutes. Before you open your trading platform, before you look at charts or check news, spend 3 minutes practicing active recall. This is your mental kata, your trading discipline practice. Use the spaced repetition schedule to determine which lessons to retrieve. Yesterday's lesson, 1-day interval. The lesson from 3 days ago, 3-day interval. The lesson from a week ago, 1-week interval. The lesson from a month ago, 1-month interval.
Each review happens just before you're about to forget, reinforcing the neural connection at the optimal moment. You'll forget sometimes. Your brain will refuse to cooperate. You'll think, I know I learned something important on Thursday, but what was it? That struggle is the training. That momentary frustration before the memory surfaces is what strengthens the neural pathway. Only after attempting retrieval should you check your journal to verify accuracy. If you forgot something, that's valuable information. It means that particular lesson needs more attention. Write it again today, restarting the spaced repetition cycle. Practice 3. Weekly integration. 10 minutes. Once a week, Sunday evening is ideal. Spend 10 minutes conducting what Japanese martial arts tradition calls kata review. You're not learning new lessons, you're integrating and connecting existing ones. Review your past month of one-sentence lessons. Look for patterns. Do multiple lessons point to the same underlying issue? For example, I overtrade when bored. I enter trades without confirmation after watching charts too long. My best trades come from patient waiting. These 3 sentences reveal a single pattern. Your biggest enemy is impatience. This insight wouldn't emerge from looking at any single day, but the pattern becomes obvious when you review collectively. Use this weekly session to identify your big 3, the 3 most critical lessons that, if permanently embedded, would transform your trading. Write these on a card you keep visible during trading sessions. These become your mantras, your non-negotiables, your core discipline. This weekly integration serves another purpose. It ensures that older lessons don't fall through the cracks. Your daily active recall practice only retrieves specific lessons on their scheduled intervals. The weekly review catches any important lessons that might have been missed and allows you to adjust your focus based on recurring patterns. The neuroscience. Why this system creates permanent behavior change. The Japanese memory system works because it aligns with 3 fundamental principles of how the brain creates lasting change. Principle 1. Effortful retrieval strengthens neural pathways. Your brain is remarkably efficient. It doesn't waste energy maintaining neural pathways for information you don't use. When you passively review information, rereading your journal, looking at your rules, your brain says, this is available externally, so I don't need to store it internally. No neural strengthening occurs. But when you're forced to retrieve information without external support, active recall, your brain treats this as a signal this information is important enough that I need instant access. The retrieval itself triggers neurochemical processes that strengthen synaptic connections. The more effortful the retrieval, the stronger the consolidation. This explains why struggling to remember is more valuable than easily recognizing. The cognitive load of retrieval creates metabolic demands that signal importance to your brain's resource allocation systems. Principle 2. Spaced learning prevents interference and promotes consolidation. Cramming creates interference. When you review the same information repeatedly in a short period, memories compete with each other. The neural pathways are fresh and unstable, and repeated activation actually creates confusion rather than clarity. Spacing allows for consolidation. Between review sessions, your brain processes the memory during rest periods, particularly during sleep. Proteins are synthesized, synaptic connections are refined, and the memory moves from temporary storage in the hippocampus to permanent storage in the cortex. The Japanese understanding of ma, the space between things, applies perfectly here. The intervals between reviews aren't empty time, they're when the real memory formation happens. Just as a potter must wait for clay to dry between shaping sessions, your brain needs time between learning sessions to solidify memories. Principle 3. Compression forces meaningful processing. The one-sentence constraint isn't arbitrary. Cognitive science shows that the level of processing during learning predicts the strength of memory formation. Shallow processing, copying, highlighting, passive review, creates weak memories. Deep processing, summarizing, connecting, explaining, creates strong memories. When you must compress an entire day's experience into one sentence, you engage in the deepest possible processing. You analyze, what actually mattered? What was the core issue? How do I describe this in a way that will be meaningful when I read it weeks from now? This compression is similar to the Japanese art of ikebana, flower arranging, where the beauty comes from what you remove as much as what you include. By removing extraneous details, you reveal essence. In trading journals, the essence is the behavioral pattern that needs changing, stripped of all contextual details that might dilute its impact. Teeshi's transformation, a case study in systematic memory. Let's examine exactly how Teeshi used this system to transform from an inconsistent trader to a disciplined profit maker. Month 1. Pattern recognition. For her first 30 days, Teeshi simply maintained the evening practice, 1 sentence per day. She didn't worry about active recall or spaced repetition yet. She just built the habit of daily reflection and compression. Her sentences revealed patterns she hadn't recognized. Week 1. 3 sentences about entering trades without confirmation. Week 2. 2 sentences about overtrading on winning days. Week 3. 3 sentences about emotional reactions to losses. Week 4. 2 sentences about violation of position sizing rules. By the end of month 1, Teeshi had identified her big 3 problems: impatience, entering without confirmation, overconfidence after wins, and emotional position sizing. Month 2. Active recall implementation. With a month of journal entries, Teeshi began her morning active recall practice. This was uncomfortable. She often couldn't remember yesterday's lesson immediately. The retrieval effort frustrated her, but she persisted. Something unexpected happened. The act of trying to remember made her more mindful during trading. When she found herself about to enter a trade without confirmation, a voice in her head said, "This is going to be tomorrow's journal entry. I entered without confirmation again." The anticipation of having to document the mistake created a moment of pause, just enough hesitation for discipline to override impulse. By the end of month 2, Teeshi noticed she was violating her rules less frequently, not because she was trying harder, but because the active recall practice had begun creating automatic warning signals. Month 3. Spaced repetition integration. Adding the spaced repetition schedule was when transformation accelerated. Teeshi created a simple tracking system. Each journal entry had a date, and she calculated the review dates: day +1, day +3, day +7, and day +30. Every morning, she knew exactly which lessons to retrieve. The repetition at increasing intervals meant certain lessons appeared again and again. Her tendency to overtrade appeared in weeks 1, 2, and 4. Her pattern of revenge trading appeared in weeks 2 and 3, and her violation of stop-loss rules appeared in weeks 1, 3, and 4. These recurring patterns got reinforced through multiple spaced repetition cycles. By month 3, Teeshi had retrieved her no revenge trading lesson 12 times across increasing intervals. The neural pathway was no longer conscious thought, it was automatic response. When she experienced a loss, the impulse to get the money back still appeared, but it was immediately accompanied by a warning signal. This is revenge trading. This always loses. Month 6. Behavioral integration. 6 months into the practice, something remarkable happened. Teeshi stopped needing to consciously think about most of her rules. The lessons had become internalized. When a trading opportunity appeared, her brain automatically ran through a checklist that she no longer consciously controlled. Does this meet confirmation criteria? Automatic check. Is my position sizing appropriate for my account size? Automatic check. Am I emotionally neutral, or am I trying to recover from a previous loss? Automatic check. The lessons hadn't just been learned, they'd been embedded into her trading behavior through systematic memory reinforcement. David's cycle, why experience without system equals repeated mistakes. Meanwhile, David continued trading. He had more screen time than Teeshi, more trades, more experience, but experience without systematic memory formation is just repeated novelty. David kept a detailed journal for about 3 weeks. Then it became too time-consuming and he stopped. He tried keeping just trade records in a spreadsheet: entry, exit, profit, loss. But numbers without psychological context don't create behavioral change. David made the same mistake on Monday that he'd made the previous Monday and the Monday before that. He moved his stop loss when trades went against him. Each time he'd think, I've got to stop doing this. But thinking isn't memory formation. Without active recall, without spaced repetition, the lesson never moved from short-term frustration to long-term behavioral change. 3 years of experience became 3 years of repeated mistakes because David never implemented a system to transform experience into wisdom. The discipline paradox, freedom through constraint. Japanese aesthetic philosophy embraces what seems like a paradox. True freedom comes through constraint. Haiku's 17-syllable limit doesn't restrict the poet, it forces precision that reveals truth. The tea ceremony's rigid protocols don't limit the practitioner, they create the framework where mindfulness can flourish. The same principle applies to trading discipline. The constraints of the Japanese memory system, 1 sentence per day, specific retrieval intervals, and forced active recall, don't restrict traders. They create the structure that allows discipline to develop automatically. David thinks discipline means trying harder, being more determined, forcing yourself to follow rules through willpower. But willpower is a finite resource. It depletes throughout the day. When you're tired, stressed, or facing a losing streak, willpower fails. Teeshi understands that real discipline isn't willpower, it's neural architecture. Through systematic memory formation, she's created automatic responses that don't require willpower. She doesn't resist the temptation to move her stop-loss through force of will. The temptation appears, and simultaneously an automatic warning signal says, "This is the pattern that always leads to bigger losses." No willpower needed, just well-trained neural pathways. Implementation. Starting your Japanese memory practice today. You don't need special software or complicated systems. You need 1 notebook, physical is better than digital for memory formation, 1 pen, 5 minutes per day, and a commitment to the system for at least 90 days. Week 1. Establish the evening practice. For your first week, focus only on the evening 1-sentence journal. After trading, or after market analysis on non-trading days, write 1 sentence capturing your most significant lesson. Don't overthink it. Don't judge the lessons. Just practice the daily distillation. Week 2. Add morning recall. Continue the evening practice and add morning active recall, but only for yesterday's lesson. Before trading, close your eyes and retrieve yesterday's sentence without looking at your journal. Speak it aloud, then verify by checking your journal. That's it. 1 minute of practice. Week 3. Expand the retrieval window. Continue both practices and expand morning active recall to include the 3-day-old lesson. Now you're retrieving 2 lessons each morning, yesterday's and 3 days ago. This takes 2 minutes, no more. The entire system, evening distillation plus morning retrieval, is 5 minutes per day maximum. Month 3. Add weekly review. After establishing the daily practices, add the weekly 10-minute integration session. This is when you identify patterns, refine your big 3 lessons, and ensure critical insights aren't lost. The compounding effect. Small daily practices, massive long-term results. 5 minutes per day doesn't sound impressive. Compared to the hours David spends analyzing charts or reading trading books, Teeshi's practice seems minimal. But memory formation doesn't respond to volume, it responds to systematic reinforcement. 5 minutes per day, consistently applied with proper technique, creates more behavioral change than hours of unfocused study. Consider the mathematics. 5 minutes per day is 35 minutes per week, 150 minutes per month, 1,800 minutes per year. That's 30 hours of systematic memory training specifically designed to prevent you from repeating trading mistakes. But the real magic isn't the time, it's the spacing. Those 30 hours distributed across 365 days with increasing intervals between repetitions create dramatically stronger memories than 30 hours crammed into intensive study sessions. This is the Japanese concept of kaizen, continuous improvement through small, consistent changes. You don't need dramatic transformation. You need systematic, incremental refinement of your neural pathways until discipline becomes automatic. Conclusion: the wisdom versus experience distinction. At the beginning of this documentary, we met 2 traders, David with his 3 years of experience and Teeshi with her 18 months of wisdom. The distinction isn't semantic. Experience is what happens to you. Wisdom is what stays with you. David has extensive experience. He's lived through countless trading scenarios. He's felt the full range of trading emotions: euphoria, fear, frustration, greed. He's seen every type of market condition. But experience without systematic memory formation is like water poured on sand. It flows through without leaving permanent change. Teeshi has less experience but more wisdom because she uses Japanese memory techniques to ensure lessons.
The path forward. 90 days to neural transformation. Neuroscientists agree that it takes approximately 90 days of consistent practice to establish new neural pathways that operate automatically. 3 months, 90 days of 5-minute practices. For the Forex trader willing to commit to Japanese memory techniques for 90 days, the transformation is almost inevitable. Not because these techniques require special talent or extraordinary discipline, but because they're designed around how the brain actually creates permanent change. David can continue trading for another 3 years, accumulating more experience, making more trades, living through more market scenarios. But without systematic memory formation, year 6 will look much like year 3. The same mistakes, the same frustration, the same cycles. Or David can become like Teeshi. He can adopt the one-sentence journal. He can practice morning active recall. He can implement spaced repetition, 5 minutes per day, 90 days, and watch as his brain transforms experience into wisdom, mistakes into lessons, and discipline into automatic behavior. The Japanese secret to memory isn't complicated. It's simply the recognition that the brain needs specific conditions to create lasting change. Compression forces meaningful processing. Active recall strengthens neural pathways. Spaced repetition prevents forgetting and promotes consolidation. These 3 practices, applied consistently with minimal daily time investment, create the neural architecture that separates profitable traders from perpetual strugglers. The choice isn't between trading with discipline or trading without it. The choice is between trying to maintain discipline through willpower, which always fails eventually, or building discipline into your neural pathways through systematic memory practices, which creates automatic responses that don't require willpower at all. One path requires constant effort and produces inconsistent results. The other path requires 5 minutes per day and produces compounding transformation that becomes easier with time. The Japanese have known this for centuries. Now you do too. The question isn't whether these techniques work. The neuroscience is clear. The question is whether you'll implement them for the 90 days required to transform your trading brain. Will you be David, collecting experiences that fade? Or will you be Teeshi, building wisdom that lasts? The notebook is waiting. The practice is simple. The transformation is inevitable if you commit to the system. 5 minutes per day, 1 sentence, active recall, spaced repetition. The Japanese secret to memory. The trader's path to permanent discipline. Start today.